Hello children, welcome to online classes. I hope you are all happy and safe at home. You are following online classes and utilizing them properly. Today I am going to explain some important points from two chapters, Chemistry in Everyday Life and Biomolecules. These two are memory based chapters, that's why even you can read from the NCERT textbook. Coming to the Chemistry in Everyday Life, drug. Drug is a chemical substance of low molecular mass which can interact with macromolecular targets and produce a biological response. If the biological response is useful and therapeutic, that is also called medicine. Diagnosis, prevention and cure of diseases, if it is done by using medicines, that branch of science is called chemotherapy. Coming to the classification of drugs. Drugs are classified on the basis of pharmacological action. So some drugs can work against the painkillers, analgesics. Some drugs can reduce the high temperature of the body, that is fever, antiseptic. They are useful to prevent the particular type of disease. Pain killing antiseptics, they are used to kill microorganisms. So based on the pharmacological action, we can classify the drugs. On the basis of drug action, it is based on the action of a drug on a particular biochemical process. Example, antihistamines. It inhibits the inflammation in the body. Next one, on the basis of chemical nature, based on the functional group present in the drug. These have common structural features with the target and they have similar pharmacological activity. Example, sulfonamides. All drugs which are having sulfonamide group considered this category. Next, last and final one, very important one, on the basis of molecular target. Interaction of drug with targets like carbohydrates. Some drugs can work against carbohydrates, targets as lipids, proteins as targets. So, based on the molecular targets, we can classify the drugs. This type of classification, fourth one, is very important. Next, enzymes, proteins which perform the role of biological catalysts. Biocatalysts are nothing but enzymes. They can catalyze the biochemical reactions which are taking place inside of the living organisms. Enzymes as target. Some drugs can work as enzymes as targets. Some drugs can work as receptors as targets. So now, based on the therapeutic action, classification of drugs and with examples, antacids. The chemical substance which can reduce or which can neutralize the hyperacidity in stomach and raise the pH to some extent. Such type of chemicals are called antacids. Example, sodium bicarbonate. For each type, definition or meaning, at the same time possible examples which are given in the NCERT textbook. Sodium bicarbonate, magnesium salts, aluminum salts, etc. These are considered antacids. Later they introduced some more, omeprazole, lansoprazole, ranitidine. These are all antacids. Antihistamines. The drugs which can combat the effects of histamine, which can reduce the effect of histamine, is a chemical. It is a chemical released by certain cells in the body during allergic action. So the drugs which can work against histamine called antihistamine. Histamine causes allergy in the body, its skin and lungs, etc. It is also responsible for nasal congestion associated with common cold and allergic response to pollen. Antihistamines neutralize the effect of histamines in the body. Example for antihistamines, you have to collect the examples, especially bromophenramine, terfenadine. Neurologically active drugs. Next one, neurologically is working on central nervous system. Tranquilizers. These are two types. Tranquilizers, analgesics are neurologically active drugs. Tranquilizers. These are used for the treatment of stress, mild or severe mental diseases like anxiety. These can relieve anxiety, stress, irritation, or hypertension, excitement. Examples to reduce the anxiety, stress, etc. Tranquilizers: chlorodiazepoxide, meprobamate, or mild tranquilizers. Equanil, this is a very important one. Equanil is used to control depression and hypertension. This is important one among tranquilizers. Analgesics, they reduce or they can remove pain without causing impairment of consciousness, mental confusion, or some other disturbances of nervous system. These are two types. Non-narcotic means non-addictive. Next to narcotic. There are some painkillers. If a patient using certain painkillers, he will be addicted to take those tablets frequently. They are narcotic drugs. Addictive analgesics. Narcotic drugs, nothing but addictive analgesics. Non-narcotic drugs, non-addictive analgesics. Aspirin and paracetamol. These are non-narcotic. If patient is using these tablets for few days, he won't ask again and again to take the aspirin and paracetamol. These are non-addictive. Aspirin inhibits the synthesis of prostaglandin, which stimulate inflammation in tissues and cause pain. In such a way, it acts as painkiller. They also reduce fever. Paracetamol can reduce the pain as well as it can reduce the high temperature of the body. So it acts as even antipyretic. It is also used in the prevention of heart attack because the aspirin is also acting as a blood thinner. It can reduce the blood clotting in the nerves. That's why the fellows who are getting heart attack will be given aspirin as first aid. Narcotic drugs. There are some analgesics, painkillers. They are addictive to the patient. Morphine, heroin, codeine belonging to narcotic analgesics. They relieve pains and produce sleep in mild doses. In high doses, they produce stupor, coma, convulsions, and ultimately even death also takes place. Morphine is obtained from opium poppy. They are used in post-operative pain, high pain disease, post-operative pain, cardiac pain, childbirth pain, etc. Next, antimicrobials. An antimicrobial destroy or prevent the development or inhibition of pathogenic action of microbes. Drug which works against microbes, microorganisms which lead to disease in the body, called microbes. So these are three types: antibiotics, antiseptics, disinfectants. The drugs which can prevent or which can destroy the microorganisms which cause to disease in the body, they are microbes. So some drugs can inhibit the growth of microbes, some drugs can kill, even they can kill the microbes in the body. These are three types: antibiotics, antiseptics, and disinfectants. Antibiotics, chemical substances which are produced by microorganisms. that inhibit the growth or that can kill the microorganisms. So chemicals which are released from certain microorganisms can kill other microorganisms. Chemicals released from, produced from microorganisms can kill the microorganisms. This type of special chemicals are called antibiotics. Example, salvarsan, which kills the spirochetes bacteria which causes syphilis. First one. Prontosil, sulfonamide, these are other. So try to remember the examples. Antibiotics have either cidal killing effect or static. They can inhibit the growth of microbes or they can kill the microbes. Or bactericidal means they can kill. Example, bactericidal antibiotics which can kill the microbes. Penicillin, aminoglycosides, ofloxacin. These are bactericidal antibiotics. They can kill the microbes. Bacteriostatic, they can stop the growth. They can control the growth of microbes. Erythromycin, tetracycline, chloramphenicol, etc. Antibiotics which can affect both gram positive and gram negative, all types of bacteria. Such type of antibiotics are called broad spectrum antibiotics. There are some types of antibiotics which can work against only one type, either gram positive or gram negative. Such type of antibiotics are called narrow spectrum antibiotics. There are few antibiotics which can work only particular bacteria. They are called limited spectrum antibiotics. Next, coming to antiseptics. They are applied on the living tissues such as wounds, cuts, ulcers, diseased skin surfaces to kill the growth of microorganisms, microbes. Example for antiseptics, chloroxylenol, terpeneol, prethiones, iodine, iodoform, boric acid, etc. Disinfectants. They are applied on inanimate objects, non-living things such as floors, drainage systems, etc. Example, 0.2 to 0.4 ppm chlorine in aqueous solution. Low concentration of SO2 can act as disinfectant. 0.2% solution of phenol is antiseptic, but high concentration. 1% solution of phenol is acting as disinfectant. So antiseptic is used on living cells, but disinfectant is used on non-living objects. That is the difference. Anti-fertility drugs. These are also called birth control pills. They contain a mixture of synthetic estrogens and derivatives of progesterone. Mixture of synthetic estrogens and derivatives of progesterone present in birth control pills. Example, norethindrone, novestrol, etc. Next topic, chemicals in food. For various purposes, chemicals are used in food, like to prevent the spoilage of food. Chemicals which are added to food for their preservation, to enhance the appearance, to add nutrition values, to give colors, flavors, to give sweetness. There are some food additives. They are fat emulsifiers, stabilizing agents, etc. Artificial sweetening agents. Natural sweeteners such as sucrose add to calorie intake, and therefore many people prefer to use artificial sweeteners. So calories will be increased by the intake of certain natural sweeteners like sucrose. Especially diabetic patients are not supposed to take natural sugars. They can increase the calories. That's why artificial sweetening agents, they won't increase the calories. Diabetic patients can take artificial sweetening agents. Food preservatives, they prevent the spoilage of food due to microbial growth. Example, table salt, sodium chloride, sugar, vegetable oil, sodium benzoate, salts of sorbic acid. These are all acting as food preservatives. Cleaning agents, soaps. Soaps are used for the cleaning purpose are sodium or potassium salts of long chain fatty acids. Example, sodium stearate, sodium oleate, sodium palmitate. So the stearic acid, fatty acid, when it is subjected to saponification with sodium hydroxide, we can get sodium stearate. This is the chemical present in soap. Or oleic acid may be there as fatty acid. This is unsaturated fatty acid present in oils. Or palmitic acid, sodium oleate, sodium palmitate present in the soap. Synthetic detergents, they are sodium salt of sulfonated long chain alcohols or hydrocarbons. Alcohols or hydrocarbons are converted into sulfonic acids. SO3H group is sulfonic acid group. Those compounds are subjected to neutralization with sodium hydroxide. We can get sodium salts of sulfonates. Example, sodium lauryl sulfate. This is an example for anionic detergents. So anion present in this detergent is responsible for the cleansing action. Similarly, this is obtained from alcoholic group. First, alcohol, lauryl alcohol is subjected to reaction with sulfuric acid. We can get lauryl hydrogen sulfate. This lauryl hydrogen sulfate being acid neutralized with sodium hydroxide, we can get sodium lauryl sulfate, which acts as anionic detergents. Similarly, dodecyl benzene, when it is sulfonated, during the sulfonation by heating with sulfuric acid, we can get sulfonic acid, dodecyl benzene sulfonic acid. Here SO3H is present. When this is subjected to neutralization with sodium hydroxide, we can get sodium dodecyl benzene sulfonate. This is a chemical present in anionic detergent, SO3 minus. So this anion is responsible for the cleansing action of soap. In anionic detergents, the anionic part of molecule is involved in the cleansing action. They are used in household work, toothpaste, etc. Next, to cationic detergents, they are quaternary ammonium salts of amines with acetates, chlorides or bromide ions, etc. These are all anions. Sorry, bromide is the anion, the other one quaternary ammonium salt. This is called quaternary ammonium salt. This quaternary ammonium salt, for the neutralization, it takes anion. So the cation quaternary ammonium ion is responsible for the cleansing action. The cationic part contains a long hydrocarbon chain. Example, long hydrocarbon chain and positive charge on the nitrogen atom. They have germicidal properties and expensive because of the germicidal properties. Example, cetyl, this is cetyl, trimethyl ammonium bromide, cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide. This is an example for cationic detergent. Non-ionic detergents, neutral. They do not contain any ion. Stearic acid, this is stearic acid, react with polyethylene glycol. This is polyethylene glycol. Dehydration takes place, that is esterification takes place to give ester type of substance. These are used in dishwashers, liquid dishwash. Next to topic, biomolecules. Molecules, macromolecules with high molecular weight which are participated in biochemical reactions called biomolecules. Example, carbohydrates, lipids, vitamins, fats, etc. These are complex organic molecules which form the basis for life. Biomolecules build up living organisms and are also required for their growth and maintenance. Examples: carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, lipids, vitamins, hormones, etc. Carbohydrates, according to the old definition, hydrates of carbon with general formula CnH2O taken M, called hydrocarbons. N may be equal to M, N may not be equal to M. So later scientists, they came to know that some carbohydrates are not following this formula. Some other compounds without formula also carbohydrates. So to avoid that one, they changed the definition. According to modern definition, polyhydroxy aldehydes and ketones with optical activity called carbohydrates. Optically active polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones called carbohydrates. Because of the chiral carbon, any carbohydrate acts as optically active. Monosaccharides classification based on the number of units obtained during the hydrolysis of given carbohydrate. Monosaccharides are simple carbohydrates which cannot be hydrolyzed. When one molecule of monosaccharide dissolved in water, it won't split into two or more than two. So almost it won't undergo any decomposition during the hydrolysis. That is called monohydrate. General formula CH2O taken n times. N may be 3 to 7. If n is equal to 6, we can get frequently used monosaccharides like glucose, fructose, ribose, galactose, etc. Next to disaccharides. One molecule of disaccharide on hydrolysis split into two monosaccharides. Example, sucrose, table sugar, maltose, malt sugar, lactose, milk sugar, etc. They have the formula C12H22O11. On hydrolysis, they can give two monosaccharides. Oligosaccharides. On hydrolysis, each one unit of carbohydrate can produce 3 to 10 simple monosaccharides. Example, trisaccharides, raffinose. Example, it produces 3 types of monosaccharides on hydrolysis: glucose, fructose, and galactose. Stachylose, this can produce glucose, fructose, and 2 molecules of galactose. So this is an example for tetrasaccharide. Polysaccharides. N number of monosaccharides are produced from one unit of polysaccharide. Example, sucrose, starch, etc. Glycogen. The general formula of the polysaccharide C6H10O5. C6H10O5. This unit is repeated n times. N may be 100 to 3000. Reducing sugars based on the reducing nature. They are divided into reducing sugars, non-reducing sugar. Carbohydrates which contain aldehyde or keto group in hemiacetal form. Hemiacetal form means at the carbon there are 2 types of groups: alkoxy group as well as hydroxy group. So compounds which are having hemiacetal group or free OH at anomeric carbon, they can reduce Tollens reagent to give metallic silver mirror test, and they react with failing solution to give red color cuprous oxide. So the carbohydrate which can reduce Tollens reagent and failing reagent is called reducing sugar. These reducing sugars, the change in specific rotation we can observe. When reducing sugars are dissolved in water, their pH will be changed on their own. That process is called mutarotation. Glucoside formation involves the ring formation with C1 and C5 carbons. Just you go through the structures of glucose, fructose, disaccharides, etc. Glucoside formation makes C1 carbon, that is anomeric carbon, asymmetric. So the carbon which is achiral in open chain structure and becomes chiral in cyclic structure is called anomeric carbon. Due to difference in the orientation of H and OH at anomeric carbon, we can get two types of isomers. One is called alpha, another one is beta. So in alpha, OH on right hand side, while in beta isomer, OH on left hand side. That carbon is called anomeric carbon. In glucose, C1 is the anomeric carbon, whereas in fructose, C2 is the anomeric carbon. Disaccharides on the hydrolysis can give two types of monosaccharides. Example, sucrose on hydrolysis can give glucose and fructose. Lactose on hydrolysis can give glucose and galactose. Maltose on hydrolysis can give glucose and glucose. Sucrose is dextrorotatory. It can rotate the plane of polarized light towards right side. But when it is subjected to hydrolysis, the dextrorotatory glucose and levorotatory fructose, it gives two types. Sucrose is dextrorotatory. When it is subjected to hydrolysis, we can get glucose and fructose. Glucose is dextrorotatory, fructose is levorotatory, but the specific rotation of levo is 92.4, while specific rotation of dextro is 52.5. That's why excess of levorotatory is there in this mixture. So during the hydrolysis of sucrose, as the nature is inverted, the process is called inversion. The sugar, sucrose, is also called invert sugar, and the enzyme which is involved in this inversion process is called invertage. Next, maltose is obtained from starch by the hydrolysis process in the presence of diastase enzyme produced by germinated barley seeds. Lactose present in milk, else it is also called milk sugar. It is a reducing sugar. So all disaccharides are reducing sugars except sucrose. All monosaccharides are reducing sugars. All disaccharides are reducing sugars except sugar, table sugar. So sucrose is non-reducing sugar because at anomeric carbon there is no free OH group. Next, starch is a polysaccharide present in wheat, maize, rice, potato, barley, etc. Starch is amorphous white powder, insoluble in cold water but soluble in little hot water. Starch on hydrolysis forms alpha D glucose units, n number of alpha D glucose units. Starch contains two types of structural components, amylose and amylopectin. Amylose is water soluble component, amylopectin is water insoluble component. Okay, amylose is water soluble and it contains D glucose units. They give blue color with iodine solution. Amylopectin is branched polysaccharide. Along with main chain of the polysaccharide, branches also there. It is water insoluble. That's why overall starch is partly soluble in water. In amylopectin, alpha D glucose glycosidic link between C1 and C4 of the molecule. Next, cellulose is the structural component of vegetable matter. Cell wall is made up of cellulose. Wood has 40 to 20% and cotton has 90% of the cellulose. It contains large number of D glucose units. Starch contains alpha D glucose. These are beta D glucose units. Beta 1,4 glycosidic linkages. Next subtopic, proteins. Amino acids contain both amine group and carboxyl group. So that's why they are called amino acids. NH2 group, amino group, and acid group COOH both are present. Amino acid molecules are linked by forming an amide. Any two amino acid molecules join each other through amide bond or peptide bond. Amide bond is written as CONH. This is called amide bond or peptide bond. Carboxylic acid of one molecule reacts with amino group of another molecule. So COOH reacts with NH of another one. H2O is separated, CONH bond is obtained. This is a peptide bond. Linkages between amino acids are known as peptide linkages or peptide bonds. CONH bond is peptide bond. Based on the number of amino acid molecules in peptide, they are called tripeptides, tetrapeptides, polypeptides, etc. If two amino acids join with each other through one peptide bond, that is dipeptide. If three amino acids join with one another through two peptide links, that is tripeptide. Simplest amino acid is glycine. General formula of the amino acid, alpha amino acid especially, or CHNH2COH. In place of R, if you write H, that becomes glycine, smallest amino acid which is optically inactive due to lack of chiral carbon. So among all 20 amino acids which are participated in the formation of proteins, only glycine is optically inactive due to lack of chiral. All other 19 amino acids are optically active. So this is 2-aminoethanoic acid. Based on the number of NH2 and COOH groups present in one molecule of amino acid, these are divided into three types. If NH2 and COOH groups are in equal number, that is neutral amino acid. If NH2 groups are more than COOH groups, that is basic amino acid. If COOH groups are more than NH2 groups, that is acidic amino acid. So amino acids are divided into two types based on the synthesis. Some amino acids are essential to the body. They must be given only through the diet. They are essential amino acids. 10 essential amino acids are there. Remaining 10 amino acids no need to give through the diet because they are produced in the body only. So 10 essential amino acids, 10 non-essential amino acids. Non-essential amino acids can be synthesized in the body only. That's why no need to give through the diet. In amino acid, at particular pH, since both acidic and basic groups are there, at suitable pH, what happens? H plus is migrated from COOH to NH2. Then it gives Zwitter ion or CH NH3 plus COO minus. So at a particular pH, amino acid can exist as Zwitter ion. That pH is called isoelectric point. The pH at which amino acid exists as Zwitter ion and cannot migrate towards anode or cathode during the electrolysis. That is isoelectric point. So this is amino acid. Due to transfer of H plus from COOH to NH2, we can get an ion that has both cation positive charge as well as negative charge. That is called Zwitter ion. If this is obtained at a particular pH, this pH is called isoelectric point. Each amino acid has its own characteristic isoelectric point. If this Zwitter ion, the solution containing Zwitter ion, when acid is added, when it is added to acidic solution, H plus taken by CO minus, then the amino acid exists in the form of cation. In basic solution, when the amino acid is added to basic solution, the amino acid particle can exist as anion, and during the electrolysis, this particle will be migrated towards anode. In Fischer projection formula of amino acid, if you take like this COOH, this is R, NH2H. Since NH2 is on right hand side at chiral carbon in Fischer projection formula, this is D amino acid. If NH2 is on left hand side, that is L amino acid. So naturally occurring amino acids are having L configuration. So when you are writing the Fischer projection formula of amino acid, NH2 should be on left hand side at chiral carbon in Fischer projection formula. Proteins are biopolymers of large number of amino acids linked through peptide bonds. So the next nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are biopolymers. These are formed by the polymerization of monomers, nucleotides. Between nucleotides, phosphodiester link. Any two nucleotides join with each other through phosphodiester link. So nucleic acids also named as polynucleotides of phosphodiester link. These are divided into two types: ribonucleic acid, deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA on hydrolysis can give deoxyribose, phosphoric acid, and nitrogen base, may be pyrimidine base or purine base. But RNA on hydrolysis produces ribose sugar moiety, phosphoric acid, and pyrimidine and purine bases. Purines and pyrimidines, there are purines are two types: adenine and guanine. Pyrimidines, nitrogen bases. Pyrimidines are three types: cytosine, uracil, and thymine. In RNA, thymine is absent, while in DNA, uracil is absent. Each nucleotide is a deoxyribonucleotide. It consists of pentose sugar, deoxyribose sugar. At second position, oxygen is removed from ribose, and a phosphate and nitrogen base. Nucleotide without phosphate is known as nucleoside. So nucleotide is a trimer which is formed by the combination of nitrogen base, sugar moiety, and phosphate. If phosphate is removed from the nucleotide, that becomes nucleoside. Next, vitamins. Vitamins are essential components, nutritional components for the growth of body. So now you go through the tabular form, any one textbook, each name of the vitamin, sources, and deficiency disease. So disease due to deficiency of vitamin can be cured only by supplying certain vitamin. Just you go through the tablet. You can pause the video and you can check. You can learn. Vitamins are divided into two types: fat soluble vitamins, water soluble vitamins. Among all vitamins, B and C vitamins only water soluble vitamins. Remaining all are fat soluble vitamins. So with this I wanted to conclude the topic. Okay, children, all the best. Thank you.
Hello children, welcome to online classes. Today we are going to discuss about basic concepts in chemistry. The chapter overview means the topics which we are going to discuss are laws of chemical combinations, mole concept in brief, stoichiometric calculations, equivalent mass and their calculations, methods to express concentration of solutions. Laws of chemical combinations, then mole concept in brief, stoichiometric calculations, equivalent masses and their calculations, methods to express the concentration of solutions. So before going into the chapter, we have to know the meaning of stoichiometry. Stoichiometry is a quantitative relationship between the reactants and the products of a chemical reaction. It's a quantitative relationship between the reactants and the products in a chemical reaction. Let us try to understand this by an example. When you take calcium carbonate on decomposition gives calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. In this reaction, 1 mole of CaCO3 gives, say, 1 mole of carbon dioxide. 1 mole weighs 100 grams and here 1 mole weighs 44 grams. From this we can say that every 100 grams of calcium carbonate on decomposition gives us 44 grams of carbon dioxide. So we know a mass relation between the reactants and the products. Such type of relation itself is called stoichiometry. Now, first thing is laws of chemical combination. So we need to learn laws of chemical combination. In that, the first one, law of conservation of mass, law of definite proportions, law of multiple proportions, law of reciprocal proportions, and Gay-Lussac's law of combining gaseous volumes. Conservation of mass, definite proportions, multiple proportions, reciprocal proportions, and Gay-Lussac's law of combining gaseous volumes. First one, law of conservation of mass. In law, it states that in any chemical reaction, the total mass of reactants should be equal to the total mass of the products. That is, total mass of reactants is equal to total mass of the products. We can say it is coming from the mass can neither be created nor destroyed. Let us take an example to understand. Let us take the same example as calcium carbonate giving rise to calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. In this reaction, 1 mole of calcium carbonate is giving us 1 mole of calcium oxide and then 1 mole of carbon dioxide. 1 mole is equivalent to 100 grams here, 1 mole is equal to here 56 grams and 1 mole is equal to 44 grams. Now when you take the total mass of products, it comes to 100 grams in this case. Means the total mass of reactants is equal to total mass of the products. This is law of conservation of mass. Next one is law of definite proportions. Whatever may be the source of compound, a given compound always contains the same elements in same proportion by mass. So a given compound contains the same elements in the same proportion by mass. Let us take the example of water. So water can be obtained by combustion of hydrogen, gives rise to water. We can take by the combustion of hydrogen. Or you can take source of rain. Rainwater also can be analyzed. So when you analyze the water from rainwater, rain or else from the combustion of H2O, on analysis the water molecule contains, that is, 2 parts of hydrogen and 16 parts of oxygen. Means the ratio, the mass ratio of hydrogen and oxygen is 1:8 irrespective of the source of the compound. This is a law of definite proportions. Then law of multiple proportions. When two elements combine with each other to form 2 or more than 2 compounds, the masses of one of the elements which combines with the fixed mass of the other will have simple whole number ratio. That when 2 elements combine with each other to form 2 or more compounds, the masses of one of the elements which is combining with the fixed mass of the other will have a simple whole number ratio. Let us take the example of elements carbon and then oxygen. Here we get 2 compounds, that is CO is there as well as CO2. Now in carbon monoxide, 12 grams of carbon is combining with 16 grams of oxygen. In carbon dioxide, 12 grams of carbon is combining with 32 grams of oxygen. So when you see the weight of oxygen or the mass of oxygen here, which is combining with the constant mass of carbon. Constant mass of the carbon. Here mass of carbon is fixed in both the compounds here. When you see the ratio of the oxygen atom combining in both the compounds, that is 16:32, which is equal to 1:2 we have. It is a simple whole number ratio. That is, the mass of the element oxygen, which is combining with the constant weight of the other element, that is carbon, is in simple whole number ratio. Let us take one more example. Sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide. In sulfur dioxide, 32 grams of sulfur is combining with 32 grams of oxygen. And in sulfur trioxide, 32 grams of sulfur is combining with 48 grams of oxygen. Now when you take the mass ratio of oxygen here also, the mass ratio of oxygen, which is combining with the constant mass of sulfur in both the compounds, say 32:48. This is a mass ratio of oxygen which is combining with the constant weight of the other element, that is sulfur here. This ratio is also simple whole number ratio. This comes out to be 2:3. Now this is a law of multiple proportions. So whenever two elements combine with each other to form two or more compounds, the mass of one of the elements which combines with fixed mass of the other will have a simple whole number ratio. Now let us take next one, law of reciprocal proportions. The ratio of masses of two elements which combine separately with the constant mass of the third element is constant mass of the third element is the ratio or simple whole number ratio in which they combine. The ratio of the masses of two elements which combine separately with the constant mass of the third element is the ratio or simple whole number ratio in which they combine. Let us understand the law through an example. Let us take the elements, say carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. We will construct a triangle. So element hydrogen here and carbon here and oxygen here. Let us take the compound of carbon and hydrogen on this side. So you can take CH4. Let us take compound H2O here, that is compound of hydrogen and then oxygen. Let us take here compound of these two, which is equal to carbon dioxide. Now when you take CH4 contains 12 grams of carbon with 4 grams of hydrogen. 12 grams of carbon is there with the 4 grams of hydrogen in the molecule CH4. In water molecule here, 16 grams of oxygen is there, is combining with 2 grams of hydrogen. In water molecule, you have 16 grams of oxygen combining with 2 grams of hydrogen. Now, according to reciprocal proportions, the ratio of the masses of the two elements, the ratio of the masses of these two elements which combine with hydrogen, you should take here constant mass of the third element. The third element is hydrogen, its mass must be fixed. In these two cases, the mass is 4 grams with CH4 and 2 grams with water. Let us fix the mass of hydrogen. So let us multiply this into 2 so that you are going to get here 4 grams of hydrogen and here it will be 32 grams of oxygen we have now. So the ratio of the masses of carbon and then oxygen which are combining with the constant weight of hydrogen. Constant weight of hydrogen is equal to 4 grams here. Now when you take the ratio of these two elements, which is 12 and then 32 is also the ratio in which these two combine to form this compound. In this compound also we have 12 grams of carbon and then 32 grams of oxygen we have. The ratio remains the same. Ratio always need not be same. It can be simple whole number ratio also. But in this case, ratio became same. That is, the ratio of masses of the two elements, say carbon and oxygen here, which are combining with the constant mass of hydrogen, is the ratio in which they combine to form a compound, or a simple whole number ratio. So it can be the same ratio or it can be even simple whole number ratio also. Now next one, Gay-Lussac's law of combining gaseous volumes. This is applicable only for gaseous components. Whenever gases react with each other, they do so in volume which have a simple whole number ratio to one another and the volumes of the products. So they have a simple whole number ratio to one another as well as to volumes of the products also. Let us take the example of H2 plus Cl2 giving rise to 2HCl. In this reaction, 1 mole of H2 and then 1 mole of chlorine is giving us say 2 moles of HCl. 2 moles of HCl. If all of them are gaseous components, and we know that 1 mole occupies 22.4 liters. So this is now 22.4 liters. This is also 22.4 liters. This is now 2 into 22.4 liters. So the volume ratio will be equal to 1:2 then now. The ratio, that is, they are having simple whole number ratio 1:2. Similarly, when you take nitrogen plus hydrogen to form ammonia, here the simple whole number ratio will be 1:3:2 we have. So 1:3:2 is also a simple whole number ratio. So whenever gases react with each other, they do so in volumes which have a simple whole number ratio to one another and the volumes of the products. One another means H2 and Cl2 and products means HCl we have. In this case N2 and H2 and then NH3 we have. This is Gay-Lussac's law of combining gaseous volumes. With this we have completed laws of chemical combination. Next we are moving towards meaning of atomic mass, molecular mass and molar mass of a substance. Atomic mass is defined as number of times the mass of element heavier than 1/12 of the mass of carbon. So here we have taken reference as C12 isotope. Number of times the mass of element heavier than 1/12 of carbon itself is called atomic mass. Mathematically, that can be given as atomic mass is equal to mass of an atom of the element by 1/12 of the mass of the atom of carbon 12. Nothing but with reference to carbon 12, we express atomic mass. Suppose we have different isotopes for a given element. In such a case, in the case of elements with isotopes here, the average atomic mass of the element is the weighted average of atomic masses of different isotopes. In the case of isotopes here, the average atomic mass of the element is the weighted average of atomic masses of the different isotopes. So mathematically we can say summation of atomic mass of the isotope into relative abundance of that isotope. Summation of atomic mass of an isotope into relative abundance of the isotope. Let us take an example to understand this. You consider chlorine isotopes. Chlorine has two stable isotopes, chlorine 35 as well as chlorine 37 we have. Chlorine 35, the natural abundance of chlorine 35 is 75% and abundance of chlorine 37 is 25% we have. Now the average atomic mass of chlorine is taken as the isotopic mass, that is 35, into its natural abundance, that is 75 by 100, plus isotopic mass of second isotope 37 into its percentage of abundance. This value comes to be equal to 35.5 we have. This is taken as atomic mass of the chlorine. That is, it is equal to atomic mass of an isotope into relative abundance of that isotope. Relative abundance means here 25% and then 75% of chlorine in this case we have. Next one, that is the molecular mass of the substance. The definition goes similar as that of atomic mass. It is fundamentally defined as the number of times the mass of a molecule heavier than 1/12 of carbon. Number of times the mass of element heavier than 1/12 of C12. Mathematically, it is a mass of the molecule of the substance, by 1/12 of the carbon 12 isotope we have. And then comes the meaning of gram molecular mass. Gram molecular mass, if you are expressing, say, molecular mass of a compound in grams, the quantity itself is known as 1 gram molecular mass. 1 gram molecular mass means we need to take molecular mass of a substance in grams. Then comes meaning of mole. Mole is the amount of substance which contains Avogadro's number of atoms or molecules or ions or any other fundamental particles is called mole. So mole is the amount of substance which contains Avogadro number of atoms or molecules or ion or any other fundamental particles. This is the meaning of mole. Then comes meaning of gram atomic mass and gram molecular mass. Suppose when you take the example of sodium hydroxide, its molecular mass is 40. When we take the mass of the substance in grams, which is numerically equal to its molecular mass, this mass of the substance is called mole of a substance, also called here gram molecular mass, also called gram molecular mass. So gram molecular mass means the mass, atomic mass. Gram molecular mass means the molecular mass of substance expressed in terms of grams is equivalent to 1 gram molecular mass and also known as 1 mole of the substance. Here one point should be clear to us, that is the difference between molecular mass, then molar mass, then molecules mass. When you say molecular mass of a substance, it is a relative mass expressed with respect to C12. That is called molecular mass of a substance. When you say molar mass of substance, it is the mass of 1 mole. It is mass of 1 mole. Mass of 1 mole itself is called molar mass of the substance, and normally we express this in terms of the grams. When you say molecules mass means the absolute mass of a molecule itself is called molecules mass. This can be obtained by dividing molar mass by Avogadro's number. This can be obtained by dividing molar mass by Avogadro's number. This is equal to molar mass by n. Avogadro's number, you are going to get the molecules mass of a substance. So molecular mass means it is the relative mass expressed with respect to carbon 12. Molar mass means mass of 1 mole of substance, and molecules mass means the absolute mass of a molecule, which can be obtained by dividing molar mass of the substance by Avogadro's number. That is going to give us absolute mass of a substance. Now comes Avogadro's law. Under similar conditions, identical conditions of temperature and pressure, equal volumes of all gases contain equal number of molecules. Under similar conditions of temperature and pressure, equal volumes of all gases contain equal number of molecules. And when you take 1 mole of any substance at STP, 1 mole of any gas at STP, it always occupies 22.4 liters. And when you say 1 mole, it also contains Avogadro number of molecules in that. Therefore, 1 mole of any gas at STP occupies 22.4 liters and also contains Avogadro's number of molecules in this. Let us take an example of this type. Say helium gas, then oxygen, then ozone gas. Suppose they have equal volumes. Let us take all have equal volumes in 3 different cylinders. Suppose they have same volumes. So volume is same. Let us keep The temperature also same, means volume is V for all of them. So volume is same. Temperature is kept as T. All have same temperature, absolute temperature. Let us suppose you are maintaining same pressure also. Now according to Avogadro's law, all these three gases will have equal number of molecules. If helium has X molecules, then oxygen will be having X molecules only. Ozone also has X molecules. So means the molecules ratio will be equal to 1:1:1. But when we see the atoms ratio in the three systems will not be equal to 1:1:3, because helium molecule contains only one atom in this, whereas oxygen molecule contains two atoms. So it is going to have 2x atoms here, and ozone molecule contains 3 atoms. Therefore, total number of atoms are 3x here, and you are going to get here 1x atoms in the case of helium. So ratio of the atoms will be equal to 1:2:3. So Avogadro's law says the molecules are equal, but not the atoms are equal when volumes are equal. So equal volumes of all gases contain equal number of molecules, but not equal number of the atoms. The atoms are depending upon the atomicity of the molecules. Then comes the stoichiometric calculations. The stoichiometric calculations mainly deal with the quantitative relationship between the reactants and products. In stoichiometric calculations, we are dealing with the quantitative relation between the reactants and products. A balanced chemical equation gives a quantitative information regarding the amounts of reactants used up and products formed in terms of moles, mass, as well as volume. So there are three types of categories we have. A balanced chemical reaction gives a quantitative information regarding the amounts of reactants used up and the products formed in terms of moles, mass, as well as the volume. And there are of three types. Mass relationship type of problems we have, mass volume type of problems we have, and volume type of problems we have. Altogether three types we have. Now let us consider mass relationship type of problems. Here mass of the one of the components of reaction mixture will be given, and they will ask us mass of the other component of the reaction mixture. So means the mass of one of the components in the reaction mixture is given, and they will ask us mass of the other component of the reaction mixture. Means, say for example, say calcium carbonate, simple reaction to understand. Calcium carbonate gives rise to calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. So 1 mole of CaCO3 gives us 1 mole of CO2. That is 100 grams CaCO3 gives rise to 44 grams of carbon dioxide we have. Now from this we have a mass relation between the reactants and products now. So they may ask us 10 grams of CaCO3 gives us how much amount of carbon dioxide gas. On multiplication, cross multiplication, we can get the answer as 4.4 grams. Such type of problems are dealt in the mass relationship type. Means they are going to give us mass of one of the components, and they are going to ask us mass of the other components of the reaction. Now when it comes to mass volume relationship type of problems, here they are going to give us mass of one of the components of reaction. They will ask us volume of the other component of the reaction mixture. Let us take the same reaction. Say for example, calcium carbonate giving rise to calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. In this reaction, we know that already 100 grams of calcium carbonate gives rise to 44 grams of carbon dioxide, that is 1 mole of carbon dioxide. And we know 1 mole at STP conditions occupies 22.4 liters. This comes at STP conditions. So now we can say that 100 grams of CaCO3 gives rise to 22.4 liters of carbon dioxide gas at STP conditions. They may ask us 10 grams of CaCO3 gives us how much amount of carbon dioxide gas. On cross multiplication, you are going to get it is equal to 2.24 liters. That is, in this type of problems, they are going to give us mass of one of the components of reaction mixture and ask us volume of the other component in the reaction mixture. They are said to be volume and mass relationship type of problems. Then comes volume type of problems. Here the components of reaction will be gaseous components. Let us take for example combustion of CH4 giving rise to CO2 and H2O. So on balancing this, we get here 2 here and 2 here now. So here 1 mole of CH4 is using 2 moles of carbon dioxide for combustion. And we know that equal moles will have equal volumes. Means if you take 1 mole is occupying say 22.4 liters, it will be 2 into 22.4 liters we have. And then that is to say, they may ask us 10 liters of the gas uses how much amount of oxygen gas. Upon on cross multiplication, we can get it will be using there 20 liters of the gas we have now. This type of problems are called volume type. Means they are going to give us volume of one of the components and ask us volume of the other components in the reaction mixture. Up to here, we have seen stoichiometric calculations basing upon the chemical reactions. Now comes equivalent mass. Equivalent mass of an element is a mass of that which combines or displaces 8 parts by mass of oxygen or 35.5 parts by mass of chlorine or else 1 part by mass of hydrogen. So equivalent mass of an element is the mass of it which combines or displaces 8 parts by mass of oxygen or 35.45 parts by mass of chlorine or 1.008 parts by mass of hydrogen. Now let us see the meaning of gram equivalent mass. Gram equivalent mass means amount of the substance in grams which is numerically equal to equivalent mass. Amount of substance in grams which is numerically equal to its equivalent mass. Say for example oxygen equivalent mass is 8. Now when you take 8 grams of oxygen, that is called 1 gram equivalent. That is amount of substance means amount of oxygen in grams which is numerically equal to its equivalent mass. Amount of substance in grams which is numerically equal to its equivalent mass itself is called gram equivalent or simply called equivalent. Now when you take hydrogen equivalent mass is 1, and when you take 1 gram of hydrogen, that is called 1 gram equivalent of hydrogen, or simply called 1 gram is also known as 1 equivalent of hydrogen there. Chlorine 35.5 grams itself is called equivalent of chlorine. Now there are some elements having variable valencies. In such cases, the elements will not have same equivalent mass in all the compounds. So same element can have different equivalent masses also depending upon the valencies. Let us take for example H2S, SO2, SO3. Now we are discussing the equivalent mass of sulfur in all the 3 compounds. If we take the first compound, 2 grams of hydrogen is combining with 32 grams of sulfur. Second compound, 32 grams of sulfur combining with 32 grams of oxygen. Third one, 32 grams of sulfur combining with 48 grams of oxygen we have. Now by definition, mass of the element which combines with 1 gram of hydrogen is defined as its equivalent mass. So 32 grams is combining with 2 grams. That implies we can say 16 grams is going to combine with 1 gram of hydrogen. Hence 16 can be called as equivalent mass of sulfur. In the second compound, 32 grams combines with 32 grams of oxygen. So with respect to oxygen, we can take equivalent mass of the element as mass of the element which combines with 8 grams of oxygen. So here 8 grams of oxygen means here we are going to get again 8 also here. So now in this case 8 grams we are going to get now. Then comes sulfur trioxide. 32 grams of sulfur is combining with 48 grams of oxygen. Therefore, the mass of the element which can combine with 8 grams of oxygen, that is itself is called equivalent mass of the sulfur, and this value comes out to be 16 by 3, which is equal to 5.33 we have. So the same element sulfur is having different equivalent masses in different compounds. It's actually depending upon the valencies. So when you take the first compound here, H2S, atomic mass is 32 and valency of sulfur in the compound is 2. 32 by 2 we got here as 16. In second compound, atomic mass is 32 and valency in the compound is also 4 we have. So it is 8 is equal to, that 32 by 4 became equal to 8. In the third compound, atomic mass is 32 and valency is equal to 6. 32 by 6 which became equal to 5.33 we have. So we can conclude that a formula as for equivalent mass of the element can be taken as atomic mass by valency. That is equivalent mass is equal to atomic mass by valency here. So in first compound 32 by 2, 16, then by 4, 8, by 6, 5.33 you are going to get. So the equivalent mass of an element need not be same. It actually depends upon the valency. When valencies are different, same element can have even different equivalent masses there. Then comes methods to find the equivalent masses of various elements. There are three main methods: oxide method, chloride method, and hydrogen displacement method we have. The oxide method, the chloride method, and hydrogen displacement method. Let us take first the oxide method. In the oxide method of determination, a known mass of the element is converted into its oxide and the mass of oxide formed is determined. So a known mass of the element is taken, you are converting the known mass of the element into corresponding oxide here now, and the mass of oxide formed is determined. From this mass of the element which is combining with 8 grams of oxygen can be calculated, which itself is equal to its equivalent mass. From this we can find out the mass of the element which is combining with 8 grams of oxygen, and that is equal to equivalent mass of the element. Let us take the calculation part here. Suppose mass of the element, say mass of element or say mass of metal is equal to x grams. Mass of metal oxide is equal to say y grams. Then comes mass of oxygen. Mass of oxygen will be equal to metal oxide minus metal use mass of oxygen. Metal oxide minus metal use mass of oxygen here. So therefore in this compound y minus x grams of oxygen is combining with x grams of metal. Now by definition, the mass of the metal which can combine with 8 grams of oxygen itself is called equivalent mass. So here we should take 8 grams of oxygen. The mass of the metal which comes with 8 grams itself is called. So therefore this we can get in this way, that is to say 8 into x by y minus x we have. So here x is the mass of the metal, is the mass of the oxygen with which the metal combines, into 8 is the equivalent mass of the oxygen. So therefore we can take like this: mass of the element by mass of the oxygen, that is with which the element combines, into 8 gives rise to equivalent mass. Say for example 1.2 grams of magnesium combines with 0.78 grams of oxygen, giving some oxide here. Then what is the equivalent mass of the magnesium? Try to see the formula. It's mass of the element by mass of oxygen. They are given mass of the element as 1.2, mass of the oxygen as 0.78. So 1.2 by 0.78 into 8, which is equal to 12.3. So 12.3 itself is the equivalent mass of the magnesium, and method is said to be oxide method we have. Then comes chloride method. In chloride method, a similar way only, a known mass of element is converted into its chloride. The mass of chloride formed is determined. From the mass of the chloride, from the mass of the element which combines with 35.5 grams of chlorine, we can calculate equivalent mass. That is, in chloride method, a known mass of element is converted to its chloride. The mass of chloride formed is determined, and from this, the mass of element combining with 35.5 grams of chlorine can be determined itself is equal to equivalent mass. That's to say, same process we can do in this case also. That is, mass of metal is equal to x grams. Mass of metal chloride is equal to y grams. Mass of chlorine is equal to metal chloride minus metal. So in this compound, y minus x grams chlorine combines with x grams metal. Now by definition, mass of the metal which combines with 35.5 grams of chlorine. So therefore, 35.5 grams of chlorine is with how much amount of the metal you have? Means 35.5 into x by y minus x we have. Means again it is mass of the metal by mass of the chlorine with which metal combines into 35.5. That gives us the equivalent mass of element in the chloride method. Let's take the example. The formula comes mass of the metal by mass of the chlorine into 35.5. An example, a chloride of metal contains 25% chlorine. Then what is the equivalent mass? When you say it contains 25% chlorine, means you have there 75% of metal is present. So mass of the metal is equal to 75 grams then now. So mass of the element is 75 grams. Mass of the chlorine is 25 grams into 35.45. That gives rise to 106. So 106 is the equivalent mass of the element in the chloride method we have. Then comes hydrogen displacement method. So in this method, certain mass of the metal is made to react with excess of dilute acid. A known mass of the metal is made to react with the excess of dilute acid, and hydrogen is displaced. The displaced hydrogen is measured. From this we can calculate the equivalent mass. So again formula remains in similar way. The mass of the element by the mass of hydrogen gas displaced into 1. 1 is the equivalent mass of hydrogen. Mass of the element by mass of hydrogen displaced into 1. That gives rise to, say, equivalent mass of the element. Say for example, 63 grams of some metal, say displacing 2 grams of hydrogen. 2 grams of hydrogen with some acid. Now what is the equivalent mass of the metal? Now equivalent mass is equal to mass of the metal 63 by mass of hydrogen displaced 2 into 1.008, which is nearly equal to 31.75 we have. This is now equivalent mass of the element which is displacing 2 grams of hydrogen which displaces 2 grams of hydrogen. That is 63 grams displaces 2 grams of hydrogen. This is the hydrogen displacement method you have. Then comes meaning of equivalent volume. What is the meaning of equivalent volume? Equivalent volume means the volume of 1 gram equivalent of a gas. 1 gram equivalent of a gas volume means, for example, let us take hydrogen. Hydrogen equivalent mass is 1 and molar mass is 2. This implies 2 grams of hydrogen, 2 grams of hydrogen occupies 22.4 liters. Now here equivalent volume means the volume of 1 gram equivalent, and hydrogen equivalent mass is 1. Therefore 1 gram of hydrogen occupies how much volume? That is 11.2. So 11.2 itself is called equivalent volume of hydrogen. Suppose you take oxygen, its equivalent mass is 8, and then molar mass is 32. Means this implies 32 grams of oxygen occupies 22.4 liters. Now volume of 1 gram equivalent, 8 grams occupies how much? The value comes out to be 5.6. So 5.6 is called equivalent volume of oxygen. So equivalent volume means the volume of 1 gram equivalent of a gas is said to be equivalent volume. Now equivalent masses of various compounds, that is acids, bases, salts, then redox reagents and ions or the radicals we can say. The various formulas we are going to discuss in this one. Equivalent mass of various compounds. First one regarding acids. In acids, equivalent mass of an acid is the number of parts by mass of the acid which contains 1.008 parts by mass of replaceable hydrogen. Not simply hydrogen, it is a replaceable hydrogen we should take. Number of parts which contains number of parts by mass of the acid which contains 1 part of replaceable hydrogen. 1 part of replaceable hydrogen we have. Let us take examples for this now. So the formula comes in this way. The equivalent mass is equal to molecular mass of the acid by basicity. Basicity means number of replaceable H plus ions. Number of replaceable H plus ions in the acid. For example, when you take sulfuric acid, replaceable H plus ions are 2. So for sulfuric acid, basicity is 2. So it is molar mass 98 by 2, which is equal to 49. And it also depends upon the reactions also. Say for example, in the following reaction, calcium hydroxide plus phosphoric acid. Now here, phosphoric acid, though it contains 3 replaceable H plus ions, in this reaction if you are observing, here it is forming calcium hydrogen phosphate here. So here in the reaction, in phosphoric acid only 2 hydrogens have been replaced. So therefore in this reaction the equivalent mass will be equal to molecular mass by 2. So in the case of acids, what we have to see is we need to see the number of replaceable H plus ions as well as in a reaction how many have been replaced. So in the reaction only 2 have been replaced. Therefore in the reaction for phosphoric acid is 98 by 2 comes out as its equivalent mass. And then in some cases we need to see even water of crystallization. Suppose you have a salt like oxalic acid. Say H2C2O4 Now in this case we have altogether 6 hydrogen atoms are present. But when a compound contains water of crystallization, we should not count hydrogens which are present in water of crystallization. So for oxalic acid, the equivalent mass will be equal to molecular mass 126 by it should be equal to 2 here, but not by 6 include of this one. So you should exclude hydrogen atoms which are present in water of crystallization. So which has come to be 63 in the case of oxalic acid. So for all acids, what we have to see is number of replaceable H plus ions, and if they involve in reaction, number of replaced hydrogen atoms, and depend in the case of hydrated salts, don't include hydrogens in the water of crystallization. Then comes equivalent mass of bases now. For a base, equivalent mass is the number of parts by mass of a base which combines with one equivalent of the acid. Number of parts by mass of a base which combines with one equivalent of acid. So in this reaction, if you are observing in this case here, that calcium hydroxide plus 2 HCl now. So here 74 grams of calcium hydroxide is combining with the 2 gram equivalents, 2 gram equivalents of the acid, because 2 HCl now, 2 gram equivalents of HCl, 2 gram equivalents of HCl. Now the mass of the base which reacts with 1 gram equivalent of an acid itself is called its equivalent mass. So therefore in this case the equivalent mass of calcium hydroxide will be equal to 74 by 2 comes here now. And then here the 2 itself is called, that is number of hydroxyl groups is called acidity in the case of the base. So formula can be taken as molecular mass by acidity there now. Number of replaceable, suppose when you take compound like aluminum hydroxide, in this case this will be equal to molecular mass by, it comes to 3, because there are 3 hydroxyl groups, it can react with altogether 3 equivalents of the acid. So acidity is the number of hydroxyl groups present, or else number of equivalents of acid with which a base reacts itself is called acidity there now. This is regarding bases. Then comes salts. In the case of salt, is the molar mass, molecular mass of the salt by total number of positive, or you can take total number of negative charges. Say for example, sodium sulfate, it is a total number of positive or total number of negative charges. Let us take the equivalent mass of sodium sulfate, molecular mass divided by 2. The 2 is because if you take sodium sulfate here, you have 2 Na plus and then SO4 minus 2 we have. There are 2 positive charges, each ion has plus 1, but there are 2 such ions. So total number of positive charges are 2 in this case, and sulfate ion is only one, has a 2 negative charge. So you can take total number of positive charges, total number of negative charges is equal to 2, but don't consider sign here, consider only the magnitude of the charges here. So it is 142 by 2 now. Now let us take one more example. Suppose you have taken a compound like say Al2 SO4 taken thrice now. In this case, this gives rise to, that is 2 Al plus 3, and then it forms 3 SO4 minus 2. So when you take the total number of positive charges, each ion carries plus 3, but we have 2 such ions are there. So totally it is equal to plus 6 charge here. And each ion carries minus 2. We have 3 ions here, so minus 6 here. So you should take total number of positive charges or negative charges. Means in this case, the equivalent mass will be equal to, it is the molar mass, the molecular mass of the substance should be divided by 6. Means it will be equal to 342 by 6 in the case of aluminum sulfate. So we need to see total number of positive charges. We are not taking simply the charge of ion. We are taking the total number of positive charges present in the solution. Then comes equivalent mass of the redox reagents, means oxidants as well as reductants. During a redox reaction, what happens is oxidation number changes. So therefore, we take equivalent mass as molecular mass of the compound by change in oxidation state. It should be always taken as per reactant molecule, or else ion. It should be taken as per reactant molecular ion. So the molecular mass of redox reagent by change in the oxidation number per reactant molecule or the ion. Let us take examples now. If you take equivalent mass of oxidizing agent, let us take potassium permanganate. It is a variable now. So potassium permanganate and oxidizing agent is in change in of oxidation state will be different in different medium. Let us take in acidic medium. In acidic medium here, potassium permanganate is changing into MnSO4. So we should know the oxidation number. So in KMnO4, Mn is having plus 7 oxidation state here, and here Mn has plus 2 state now. Difference between these two is equal to, that is 5. So therefore, equivalent mass is equal to molecular mass of potassium permanganate divided by 5. Molecular mass is 158 by 5. This 5 is nothing but change in the oxidation state itself is 5. Therefore 31.5. So in acidic medium, potassium permanganate changing into MnSO4. So change in oxidation number is 5. Therefore it is taken as molecular mass by 5. Let us take same compound in basic medium. In basic medium, the same compound potassium permanganate now changes into K2MnO4. Changes into K2MnO4. So here state is equal to plus 7 and here state is equal to plus 6 we have now. So change in state is equal to 1. So therefore the equivalent mass will be equal to molecular mass by 1, which is equal to 158 we have. In basic medium, the equivalent mass of potassium permanganate is also equal to its molecular mass because change in oxidation state became equal to 1. Now when you take the neutral medium here, KMnO4 is changing into say MnO2. Again here oxidation numbers in MnO2, the oxidation state of manganese is plus 4 here. Here oxidation state is equal to plus 7 here. So change is equal to 3. Therefore the molecular mass by 3 itself gives rise to the equivalent mass of potassium permanganate. So in the case of oxidizing agents, we need to see the molecular mass divided by decrease in the oxidation state. Now when it comes to reductants, reductants undergo oxidation. Therefore we need to see the increase in its oxidation number. So when you take more salt is nothing but ferrous ammonium sulfate. There ferrous ions are there. Ferrous ions are getting oxidized to ferric ions in more salt reactions. So therefore change in state is equal to only 1 we have. So equivalent mass of the more salt will be equal to molar mass of the more salt by 1, and molar mass is found to be equal to 392 we have. So altogether redox reagents, we need to take the molecular mass of the reagent should be divided by change in the oxidation state. That should be only per reactant molecule. Then comes equivalent mass of the ions. Whenever we come across ions or say radicals, then we need to take the charge of the radical that is present. So formula mass by its valency. So when you have taken equivalent mass of SO4 minus 2, the formula mass is 96. By 2 is because of charge here now. Suppose when you take another ion like say CO3 minus 2, which is equal to the charge total mass is equal to 60, that is the formula mass is 60 here by 2, it comes out to be 30 in this case. So 30 is the equivalent mass of carbonate ion and 48 is the equivalent mass of sulfate. So we are taking their formula mass of the ion, nothing but sulfur atomic mass plus 4 into the atomic mass of oxygen gives us to 96 by 2 is a charge that is present there. That is called equivalent mass of ion. Then the equivalent masses of a substance. When you take a substance here, can be obtained by adding the equivalent masses of various constituents also. That is when you take for example, means we can say the equivalent mass of a substance is also equal to sum of the equivalent masses of the constituent particles. Let us take for example calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate. Now we require equivalent mass of calcium carbonate. Now here equivalent mass of calcium carbonate can be taken as the equivalent mass of calcium ion. Per ion or radical, equivalent mass is equal to, that is a formula mass 40 by the charge present by 2, which is equal to 20 in this case. And then carbonate radical, the formula mass 60 by charge 2, which is equal to 30 we have. When you take CaCO3, just add the equivalents of the constituents here. Adding this, you are going to get 50 here. Now 50 is a equivalent mass of calcium carbonate. So the equivalent mass of a substance is equal, can be obtained by simply adding the equivalent masses of the constituent parts which are present in that. And constituent parts means we need to take the formula mass by the charge of the ion. Just add those two. Then you are going to get the equivalent mass of the compound. Then one more thing, the equivalent mass can be obtained even from Faraday's laws of electrolysis also, and where the equivalent mass is defined as, it can be defined as the mass of substance deposited when 1 Faraday of charge is passed. 1 Faraday is nothing but equal to charge present on 96,500 coulombs, or you can say 1 mole of electrons. Let us take an example like this. Suppose you have a silver ion solution. So we have silver ions in a solution. When we pass here 1 mole of electrons, 1 mole electrons, that is nothing but we are passing 1 Faraday of charge. 1 Faraday of charge, 1 Faraday of charge. Then you are going to get here 1 mole of silver. Because each ion requires 1 electron. we are passing 1 mole of electrons, so we are going to get 1 mole of silver, which is also equal to 108 grams. Now when you take copper ion solution, and here if you are passing same 1 mole of electrons here, means say 1 Faraday of charge here. Each copper ion requires 2 electrons. Each copper ion requires 2 electrons. So if you pass here 2 moles, you are going to get 1 mole of copper. Since we are passing only 1 mole here, you are going to get here half a mole. This will be equal to half mole of copper, which is equal to 63.5 by 2, which is equal to 31.75 we have. 31.75. Now here, this 31.75 and 108 are nothing but the equivalent masses of these two metals only. That is, it's equivalent to atomic mass by valency, atomic mass by valency we have. So it can be defined as, equivalent mass can be defined as the mass of substance deposited when you are passing 1 mole of electrons, nothing but 1 Faraday of charge. Then comes the last part, methods to express the concentration of solutions. There are different methods to express concentration of solutions. That is a parts per million, normality, molarity. We have molality also, and then mole fraction, and molality is also present. Parts per million, it is in ppm parts per million. It's a parts of a substance present in 10 to the power of 6 parts of the 10 to the power of 6 parts of mass by bulk, means number of parts present in 1 million parts of a substance itself is called parts per million. Say for example, 1 gram of substance is say present in 10 power 6 grams of solution. That is said to be having a concentration of 1 ppm. 1 gram is present in 10 power 6 grams of a solution. That is said to have a concentration equal to 1 ppm there. So number of parts present in 1 million parts of a solution itself is called parts per million. Then comes normality. Normality is defined as number of gram equivalents of solute present in 1 liter solution. Number of gram equivalents of solute present in 1 liter. So fundamental formula of normality will be equal to number of gram equivalents by volume in liters we have. So from this we can say number of gram equivalents, means from this part number of gram equivalents will be equal to normality into volume we have. So normality into volume in liters will give us number of gram equivalents of solute. And the formula to calculate number of gram equivalents is equal to mass of the element by equivalent mass. That gives us the number of gram equivalents. Say for example, 100 grams of NaOH. How many gram equivalents we have? Mass of the element, mass of the compound is 100, and then its equivalent mass is 40. So 2.5. So 100 grams of NaOH will have 2.5 gram equivalents of the substance. So number of gram equivalents of a solute is equal to normality into volume in liters. And to get number of gram equivalents, we require mass of the compound or mass of the element divided by equivalent mass of the compound or element. So therefore, from this we can find out the number of gram equivalents. So after finding out number of gram equivalents, then you can find out the normality, because normality is defined as number of gram equivalents in 1 liter solution. Therefore, the formula of normality will be equal to mass of solute by equivalent mass. Means up to here you are going to get number of gram equivalents of solid present in 1 liter itself is called normality. So mass of solute by equivalent mass, the mass of solute in 1 liter by equivalent mass itself gives normality. And the mass of solute, means from this formula we can get mass of solute also, is equal to normality of solution into equivalent mass. So normal and equivalent mass gives rise to mass of solute. So for example, what is the mass of NaOH present in a liter solution of 0.2 normal strength? So they have given normality, they have given volume. We require what is the mass of solute present. So mass of solute present is equal to normality into equivalent mass. Normality is given as 0.2 and equivalent mass of NaOH is equal to 40, 0.2 into 40, therefore 8. That is regarding normality. Then comes during dilution. During dilution means here, whenever we dilute a solution, means for example you have two solutions. Let us take HCl here. A solution of normality say N1 and say volume V1. And then suppose we add water for this, adding water for this. It gets diluted. On dilution, the concentration changes. Let us suppose that the new solution has a normality equal to N2. Volume has been changed to say V2 for us now. When you are adding water here, the number of equivalents of solute which is present is not changing. Because amount of solute is not changing, therefore number of equivalents also will not change. So then we have a relation like number of equivalents of solute can be equated, and number of equivalents formula is equal to normality into volume itself gives number of equivalents. Hence equating these two, we can get the principle of dilution. So N1 V1 will be equal to N2 V2. So we can find out what is the final normality of the solution by adding the known quantity of the water. This is regarding dilution principle. Then comes mixture. Suppose you take two solutions, that is solution A and say solution B you have taken there, of normality N1, volume V1, normality N2, volume V2. We mixed these two and then we prepared another solution now. Now we require normality of this final solution now. Use the fundamental principle, normality is equal to gram equivalents of solute by total volume of solution. Gram equivalents is given by N1 into V1. So N1 into V1 gives the number of gram equivalents of the first solution, and N2 into V2 gives rise to number of gram equivalents in second solution. We are mixing these two, therefore total number of gram equivalents will be equal to N1 V1 plus N2 V2. So here total equivalents and then total volume of entire solution, because fundamental formula is total number of gram equivalents by total volume. So the normality of the mixture can be given by total number of gram equivalents, means N1 V1 plus you can take N2 V2 by the total volume. This gives rise to the normality of the mixture. So total number of equivalents by total volume gives rise to number of gram equivalents. Let us take an example for this. Suppose you have mixed 50 ml 2 normal solution of HCl to 150 cc of 5 normal HCl. We are mixing two solutions, 50 cc of 2 normal and 150 cc of 5 normal. So the basic formula is what? Should find out total gram equivalents, means 50 into 2 plus 150 into 2. 50 into 2. 50 into 2 is the number of equivalents, number of milli equivalents in solution 1. 150 into 2 will be number of milli equivalents solution 2. So 50 into 2, 50 into 2 is equal to, total volume is equal to 50 plus 150. So normality of the mixture will be equal to 50 into 2 plus 50 into 5, 150 into 5 here, 150 into 5, 750 by total volume. This gives us the normality of the mixture. So N1 V1 we can take like this, N1 V1 plus N2 V2. We mixed both the components, therefore it is equal to V1 plus V2. This gives the normality of the mixture. Then comes molarity. Molarity is defined as number of gram moles of solute present in 1 liter solution. Number of gram moles present in 1 liter solution. Then comes how to get the number of gram moles. So gram moles is given as mass of the substance, mass by molar mass. Itself gives number of gram moles now. So now formula for molarity will be equal to mass of substance by molecule. So up to here you are going to get number of gram moles. So number of gram moles and volume 1 liter. So number of gram moles in liter solution gives rise to molarity. Now relation between the molarity and normality. So normality is given as molarity into n factor. N factor means here, suppose when you take HCl, n factor will be equal to 1, means for all acids, n factor will be equal to number of replaceable H plus ions. So for acids when you take HCl, n factor is equal to 1. For H2SO4, n factor is equal to 2 for this. And when you take the bases, n factor will be equal to number of hydroxyl groups. If it comes out to be redox reagents, then n factor will be equal to change in oxidation state. So n factor for all acids will be equal to basicity. N factor for all bases will be equal to acidity. N factor for redox reagents will be equal to change in the oxidation state we have. There's a relation between the molarity and normality we have. Then comes the molality. It is defined as number of gram moles of solid present in 1 kilogram of solvent here. Number of gram moles in 1 kilogram of solvent itself is called molality, and mole fraction is a ratio of number of moles of a substance to total number of moles of the number of moles present in solution. Mole fraction is defined as number of moles of a substance to total number of moles present in a given solution. Means it comes like this. Suppose a solution contains 2 moles of oxygen, 4 moles of hydrogen and 3 moles of nitrogen. Let us see what is the mole fraction of all the components here. So mole fraction of H2 will be equal to number of moles of H2, that is 4 here. 4 by total number of moles, means 2 plus 4 plus 3 is equal to 9 we have. So it is equal to mole fraction of H2. Similarly, mole fraction of O2 means total number of moles of oxygen gas by total number of moles of oxygen gas. So 2 moles of oxygen we have by total number of moles 9 we have. Similarly, mole fraction of N2. So number of moles of a component to total number of moles of all the components in a solution is said to be mole fraction. Now in a solution containing liquids, the mole fraction of a components can be calculated by calculating the number of moles of solute and the number of moles of solvent. So we can get the mole fraction of a solution or mole fraction of individual components by knowing the number of moles of solute and the number of moles of solvent. Suppose Na is the number of moles of solute and say Nb number of moles of solvent we have. So mole fraction is given by number of moles of solute, that is Na, by total number of moles of solute plus solvent we have. Similarly, mole fraction Xb will be equal to Nb by Na plus Nb. And then sum of the mole fractions, because denominator being same in both the cases, sum of the mole fractions is equivalent to 1 we have. Then comes in volumetric analysis. In volumetric analysis, basing on the law of chemical equivalence. Law of chemical equivalence means substances react always in the ratio of their gram equivalents. Itself is called chemical law of chemical equivalence. So whenever two substances react, they always react in the ratio of equivalents. So whenever acid or base or oxidant reductant react completely, then number of equivalents must be equated. That is to say, number of equivalents is given by the formula normality into volume. So N into V is equated in both the cases. This is a principle while solving the problems basing upon the volumetric analysis. Thank you.